Elijah Turner sat on the splintered stool in his tiny studio apartment, the dim light from his single overhead bulb casting long shadows on the walls. The space smelled of oil paints, turpentine, and determination. The cracked plaster walls were lined with his creations, bold splashes of color, portraits that seemed to stare into your soul, and abstract pieces that felt like the sound of jazz captured on canvas. This was Elijah's world, a sanctuary where he poured his soul into his art, even as the city outside seemed determined to ignore him. A passion ignited. Born and raised in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago, Elijah's love for art began when he was just a boy. He would sit by the window of their tiny apartment and sketch the world outside, the uneven sidewalks, the bustling street markets, and the ever-changing faces of the people in his community. His mother, a nurse who worked long hours, encouraged his talent, scraping together money to buy him sketch pads and pencils when she could. Elijah's father, on the other hand, was more pragmatic. A factory worker with calloused hands and a weary heart, he often reminded Elijah that the world wasn't kind to dreamers, especially black ones. "Art doesn't pay the bills, son," he'd say, shaking his head as Elijah worked tirelessly on a new piece. But Elijah was undeterred. His art wasn't just a hobby, it was his voice, a way to capture the beauty, pain, and complexity of the world around him. The harsh realities of the art world. After graduating high school, Elijah earned a scholarship to a local art school, where he honed his skills and developed his unique style. His work blended realism with abstract expressionism, drawing inspiration from artists like Basquiat, Romare Bearden, and the vibrant murals of his neighborhood. His professors praised his talent, but Elijah quickly learned that talent alone wasn't enough. The art world, as he soon discovered, was a fortress guarded by gatekeepers who favored established names and connections over raw potential. Gallery owners, collectors, and critics seemed to operate in an insular world where who you knew mattered more than what you created. For someone like Elijah, a young black artist with no connections or financial safety net, breaking into this world felt like trying to scale an unscalable wall. To make ends meet, Elijah took a job as a janitor at a downtown office building. By day, he scrubbed floors and emptied trash bins. By night, he painted in his cramped apartment, often working until the early hours of the morning. He lived paycheck to paycheck, sacrificing meals and comfort to buy canvases and paints. Despite the hardships, Elijah never lost sight of his dream. The daily grind. Elijah's routine was grueling. His alarm would blare at 5 a.m., jolting him awake in the darkness. He'd pull on his uniform, grab a piece of toast, and catch the bus to work. The ride was long, and the bus was often crowded, but Elijah didn't mind. He used the time to sketch in his notebook, capturing fleeting moments, a mother cradling her child, a man lost in thought, the graffiti-strewn walls that flashed by the window. After an 8-hour shift of physical labor, Elijah would return home, his body aching but his mind buzzing with ideas. He'd change into his paint-splattered clothes, set up his easel, and lose himself in his art. His studio was a chaotic but magical space. Paintbrushes were stuffed into jars, tubes of paint were scattered across the table, and unfinished canvases leaned against every wall. This was where Elijah felt most alive, where he could forget the world's indifference and focus on creating something meaningful. The masterpiece. One night, after months of experimentation and countless discarded drafts, Elijah stood before a blank canvas, his mind racing with ideas. He wanted to create something that encapsulated his experiences, the struggles, the resilience, the beauty of finding light in the darkest places. Hours turned into days as he worked tirelessly, layering colors, textures, and emotions onto the canvas. The result was breathtaking. The painting, titled Resilience, was a vivid explosion of color and form. At its center was the silhouette of a man standing tall, surrounded by swirling chaos, a visual representation of strength amidst adversity. The piece felt alive, pulsing with energy and emotion. Elijah stared at it, his chest swelling with pride. He knew, deep down, that this painting could change his life. The quest for recognition. With resilience carefully wrapped and tucked under his arm, Elijah began his journey to find a gallery that would showcase his work. He researched local galleries, identifying those that claimed to support emerging artists. His first stop was a small gallery in the Arts District, where he waited patiently to speak with the owner. When his turn came, he was met with a polite but dismissive response. "Your work is interesting," the owner said, barely glancing at the painting. "But it's not what we're looking for right now." Undeterred, Elijah moved on to the next gallery, and the next. The responses began to blur together, polite rejections, vague promises to get back to him, and, in some cases, outright condescension. At one gallery, the owner didn't even bother to hide her disdain. "Your style is bold," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But our clientele prefers something more refined." Elijah's heart sank, but he refused to give up. He knew his work was good, great, even, and he believed that someone, somewhere, would see its value. The Oakwood Gallery. His final stop was the Oakwood Gallery, one of the most prestigious art spaces in the city. The gallery was known for its opulent exhibitions and high-profile clientele. Walking through its grand doors, Elijah felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. He approached the front desk and asked to speak with the owner, Charles Bennett. Charles was a tall, imposing man in an expensive suit, his air of superiority palpable. When Elijah introduced himself and unveiled resilience, Charles barely glanced at the painting before dismissing it. "This isn't the kind of work we showcase here," he said with a condescending smile. "Our clients prefer pieces with pedigree." Elijah tried to explain the story behind the painting, the emotion and meaning woven into every brushstroke, but Charles waved him off. "I suggest you try one of the community galleries. They might be more your speed." Humiliated and disheartened, Elijah left the gallery, clutching his painting like a lifeline. The sting of rejection was sharp, but it was the underlying racism and elitism in Charles's words that cut the deepest. As he walked home, his mind raced with thoughts of giving up, but deep down, he knew he couldn't. He wouldn't. The Oakwood Gallery stood like a beacon of wealth and exclusivity in the heart of the city, its grand facade framed by towering columns and adorned with a sleek, minimalist sign. Inside, the air carried a faint scent of expensive wood polish and floral arrangements, mingling with the quiet murmur of well-dressed patrons admiring carefully curated pieces. The gallery was an elite space, known for hosting exhibitions of celebrated artists whose works often sold for prices higher than most people's annual salaries. It was a place Elijah had avoided for years, convinced it was impenetrable to someone like him. But today was different. Armed with his most heartfelt creation, resilience, Elijah had decided to confront his fears. His heart pounded as he stepped through the heavy glass doors, the painting tucked securely under his arm. His faded jeans, worn sneakers, and paint-speckled hoodie stood in stark contrast to the tailored suits and cocktail dresses of the patrons inside. He felt their curious, judgmental eyes on him, but he squared his shoulders and approached the front desk. The introduction. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Bennett," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. The receptionist, a young woman with a sharp bob and a clipped demeanor, looked him up and down, her expression unreadable. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but," Elijah hesitated. "I'm an artist. I think Mr. Bennett would be interested in seeing my work." The receptionist's lips curled into a faint smirk. "Mr. Bennett is very busy, but I'll see if he's available." She disappeared into a side room, leaving Elijah standing awkwardly in the middle of the gallery. He tried not to notice the dismissive glances from the patrons as they whispered to each other. After a few tense minutes, the receptionist returned, motioning for Elijah to follow her. Charles Bennett, the gallery owner, was waiting in a sleek office lined with bookshelves and framed photographs of him posing with renowned artists. He was a tall man in his mid-50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored gray suit, his salt-and-pepper hair slicked back. He radiated an air of authority and superiority. "You're the artist?" Charles asked, his tone laced with skepticism as he eyed Elijah's appearance. Yes, Elijah said, stepping forward and carefully unwrapping Resilience. This is my latest piece. I thought it might resonate with your gallery's audience. The dismissal. Charles barely glanced at the painting before leaning back in his leather chair with a sigh. Interesting, he said flatly, though his expression suggested otherwise. But not quite what we're looking for. Elijah swallowed his disappointment. If you don't mind, I'd like to explain the piece. It's called Resilience. It represents. Charles held up a hand to stop him. Look, I appreciate your passion, but this isn't a charity. Our clients come here expecting a certain level of sophistication and prestige. They're not looking for whatever this is. Elijah's face burned with humiliation. If you'd just take a closer look. I've seen enough, Charles said, cutting him off. He gestured toward Elijah's clothes. And if you want to be taken seriously, you might consider presenting yourself better. First impressions matter in this business. The words hit Elijah like a punch to the gut. He had expected rejection, prepared for it, even, but the condescension, the outright dismissal of his work without a second glance, was more than he had anticipated. Thank you for your time, Elijah said, his voice tight as he wrapped Resilience back up. He turned to leave, his steps heavy with defeat. The humiliation. As Elijah exited the office and made his way through the gallery, the humiliation followed him like a shadow. A few patrons turned their heads to watch him go, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. He heard snippets of whispered conversations, the words amateur and out of place floating in the air like daggers. He walked out into the crisp evening air, the city lights blurring through the tears threatening to spill. He had come to the Oakwood Gallery with hope, with the belief that his work could speak for itself, only to find that in this world, appearance and connections mattered more than talent. The witness. Unbeknownst to Elijah, someone had been watching the entire exchange. Sophia Hamilton, a well-known art enthusiast and collector, had been browsing the gallery when she noticed Elijah enter. Sophia was a woman in her late 30s, with an eye for spotting raw talent and a passion for discovering underrepresented artists. She had seen the way Charles dismissed Elijah without giving his work a fair chance, and it left a sour taste in her mouth. As Elijah walked away from the gallery, Sophia followed him at a distance. She could see the slump of his shoulders, the way he clutched the wrapped painting as if it were his lifeline. Something about him intrigued her, the quiet determination in his eyes, the vulnerability masked by pride. She decided to approach him. "Excuse me," Sophia called out as she caught up to him. Elijah stopped and turned, surprised to see a well-dressed woman standing before him. Her warm smile was a stark contrast to the cold reception he had just endured. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cautious. "I couldn't help but notice your painting," Sophia said, gesturing to the wrapped canvas. "I was in the gallery when you showed it to Charles. He didn't give it the attention it deserved." Elijah stiffened, unsure whether this was another setup for humiliation. "And you're telling me this because..." "Because I think he's wrong," Sophia said firmly. "And because I'd like to see your work." A ray of hope. Elijah hesitated. He had spent the entire day being dismissed and belittled, and trusting a stranger didn't come easily. But there was something genuine about Sophia's interest that made him pause. "All right," he said finally, unwrapping Resilience and holding it up for her to see. Sophia gasped softly, her eyes widening as she took in the piece. She stepped closer, studying the intricate details, the vibrant colors, and the raw emotion that radiated from the canvas. "This is incredible," she said after a moment, her voice filled with awe. "The depth, the energy, it's powerful. Charles has no idea what he's missing." Elijah felt a spark of hope reignite in his chest. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It means a lot to hear that." Sophia smiled. "I want to help you, Elijah. I have connections in the art world, people who would appreciate your talent. If you're willing to trust me, I think we can get your work the recognition it deserves." Elijah stared at her, stunned. He had spent so long fighting to be seen, to have his art acknowledged, that the idea of someone offering to help felt almost too good to be true. But as he looked into Sophia's earnest eyes, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: belief. "All right," he said, his voice steady with newfound determination. "Let's do it." And with that, Elijah took his first step toward a brighter future, unaware of just how much his life was about to change. The evening after their encounter outside the Oakwood Gallery, Elijah sat in his apartment, staring at Resilience propped up against the wall. His modest studio, filled with the familiar scent of oil paints and the faint hum of the city outside, felt different that night, alive with an unspoken promise. For years, Elijah had poured every ounce of his soul into his art, but he had never felt as though the world cared to notice. Sophia's words lingered in his mind: "I want to help you." It was a sentiment he wasn't used to hearing. A chance meeting turns into a partnership. The next day, Sophia reached out as promised. Her voice was warm and enthusiastic over the phone, and she wasted no time outlining her plan. "Elijah, I've been thinking about your work," she began. "There's an international art competition happening in New York next month. It's prestigious, artists from all over the world participate. The judging panel is composed of some of the most influential names in the art world." Elijah hesitated, gripping the phone tightly. "Sophia, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but these competitions, they're not exactly kind to people like me." "I know it's daunting," Sophia admitted, her tone empathetic. "But trust me, your work is extraordinary. It deserves to be seen. I'll help you with the submission process and cover any fees. All I need is your permission." Her belief in him was infectious, and for the first time in years, Elijah felt a sliver of hope. "Okay," he said after a long pause. "Let's do it." Preparation for the competition. Over the following weeks, Sophia and Elijah worked tirelessly to prepare his submission. Sophia, a seasoned collector, knew exactly how to position Elijah's work to stand out. Together, they photographed Resilience under optimal lighting, capturing its every detail and nuance. Sophia crafted an artist statement that highlighted Elijah's background, his inspirations, and the profound message behind the painting. "Your story is just as important as your art," Sophia said one evening as they worked in Elijah's studio. "People need to understand the soul behind the brushstrokes." The submission was finalized and sent off, and all that was left to do was wait. Elijah, who was used to rejection, tried to temper his expectations. But Sophia's unwavering confidence in his work gave him a flicker of hope he couldn't ignore. The announcement. Weeks later, Elijah's phone buzzed with an email notification. His heart raced as he opened it, his eyes scanning the words that felt almost surreal. "Congratulations! Your work, Resilience, has been selected as a finalist for the New York International Art Competition." For a moment, he couldn't move. The words blurred on the screen as a wave of emotion crashed over him. He immediately called Sophia, his voice shaking with excitement. "They picked me," he said, barely able to believe it. "They actually picked me." Sophia's laughter was bright and triumphant on the other end of the line. "I knew they would. Elijah, this is just the beginning." The exhibition. The competition's exhibition was held in a sprawling gallery in Manhattan, its walls lined with works from artists across the globe. Resilience was displayed prominently in the center of one room, its vibrant colors and raw emotion drawing a steady stream of admirers. Elijah, dressed in a suit Sophia had insisted he buy, stood nervously near his piece, watching as critics, collectors, and fellow artists studied his work. He overheard snippets of conversations that left him stunned. "This is unlike anything I've seen before. The energy is palpable. The story behind this piece, it's remarkable. Who is Elijah Turner? I need to know more about him." The judges, a panel of renowned curators and artists, spent an unusually long time deliberating in front of Resilience. When the awards were announced, Elijah's name was called as the winner of the competition's top prize. Applause erupted around him, but all he could do was stand frozen, his mind struggling to process what was happening. As he accepted the award, a journalist asked him how it felt to win. Elijah's voice trembled with emotion as he replied, "It feels like being seen for the first time." Viral attention. News of Elijah's win spread quickly. Photos of resilience flooded social media, along with stories about Elijah's journey from a struggling artist to an award-winning creator. Art blogs and magazines featured glowing reviews, praising his innovative style and the deeply personal narratives in his work. One critic wrote, "Elijah Turner's resilience is not just a painting, it's an anthem. It speaks to the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity, and it's a testament to the transformative power of art." The painting's viral fame brought offers from major auction houses and private collectors, all eager to purchase it. Sophia, now acting as Elijah's manager, carefully negotiated on his behalf, ensuring he received the recognition and compensation he deserved. A global sensation. Elijah's paintings became the talk of the art world. Collectors from around the globe clamored for his work, and galleries that had once dismissed him now begged to showcase his pieces. His modest studio was replaced by a spacious loft filled with natural light, where he could create without limitations. Sophia organized Elijah's first solo exhibition, titled The Journey of Resilience, which sold out within hours. Each piece told a story of struggle, perseverance, and triumph, resonating deeply with audiences. Auction houses began to list his paintings, and the results were staggering. Resilience sold for $2.5 million, setting a record for a contemporary artist's debut work. Elijah, once ignored and underestimated, had become a household name in the art world. The transformation. Despite his newfound wealth and fame, Elijah remained grounded. He used his platform to speak about the challenges faced by underrepresented artists and to advocate for greater diversity in the art world. He established a foundation to support emerging artists from marginalized communities, providing them with resources and opportunities he had once lacked. Sophia, now a close friend and trusted partner, continued to guide him through the complexities of the art world. She often marveled at how far he had come, but Elijah was quick to remind her that it was her belief in him that had sparked his transformation. The turning point. Looking back, Elijah often thought about that fateful day at the Oakwood Gallery. The rejection that had once felt like a crushing defeat had, in hindsight, been the catalyst for his success. He realized that being dismissed by Charles Bennett had only fueled his determination to prove himself, and that Sophia's timely intervention had changed everything. As Elijah stood on the balcony of his loft one evening, watching the city lights twinkle below, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. His journey had been anything but easy, but it had led him to a place where his art could inspire others and where his voice could finally be heard. He picked up his sketchbook and began to draw, his mind filled with ideas for his next masterpiece. For the first time, he wasn't creating out of desperation or a need to be seen. He was creating because he had something to say, and now, the whole world was listening. A vision for change. Elijah Turner stood in the middle of his new gallery, the Turner Collective, a space he had dreamed about for years. The gallery was vibrant and alive, every wall adorned with art from underrepresented creators, works that pulsed with stories and experiences often overlooked by mainstream audiences. As patrons wandered the halls, admiring the pieces, Elijah couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. He had made it. But more importantly, he had created something meaningful, a space that gave others the opportunity he had once fought so hard to find. Using the millions he had earned from his breakthrough, Elijah had poured his resources into building a gallery that would challenge the art world's rigid gatekeeping. His mission was clear: to spotlight artists whose voices had been marginalized and to redefine what prestigious art could be. The Turner Collective quickly gained traction, earning praise for its bold, unapologetic exhibitions and its commitment to inclusivity. Critics lauded Elijah not just as a groundbreaking artist but as a trailblazer reshaping the industry. Charles Bennett's fall. Meanwhile, the Oakwood Gallery, once the pinnacle of exclusivity and prestige, was struggling. Charles Bennett's unwillingness to adapt to a changing world had alienated younger audiences and modern collectors. As the art world increasingly embraced diversity and innovation, Oakwood's stale exhibitions and elitist atmosphere began to feel outdated. Critics slammed the gallery for its lack of representation, and its once loyal clientele started seeking fresh voices elsewhere. Attendance dwindled, and the gallery's profits plummeted. Charles, once a towering figure in the art community, found himself scrambling to keep the business afloat. The irony was not lost on Elijah. Oakwood Gallery, the very place that had dismissed him and his work, was now on the verge of collapse, while the Turner Collective thrived. But Elijah wasn't one to revel in someone else's misfortune. Instead, he saw an opportunity, a chance to reclaim the space where his journey had almost ended. The return to Oakwood. Elijah decided it was time to pay Oakwood Gallery a visit, not as the struggling artist he once was, but as a successful collector and entrepreneur. Dressed in a tailored suit and accompanied by Sophia, now his business partner, Elijah walked through the familiar glass doors with a confidence that turned heads. The gallery's interior had lost its former luster. The walls, once lined with expensive and exclusive pieces, now held uninspired works that felt more like filler than art. A few patrons meandered about, their subdued expressions reflecting the gallery's waning relevance. At the front desk, Elijah asked to see Charles Bennett. The receptionist, a different woman from his first visit, glanced at him skeptically. "Do you have an appointment?" Elijah smiled. "Tell Mr. Bennett that Elijah Turner is here. I'm sure he'll want to see me." The receptionist disappeared into the back office, and moments later, Charles Bennett emerged. He looked older, the stress of recent years evident in the lines on his face. When his eyes landed on Elijah, he didn't recognize him. "Yes?" Charles said, his tone clipped. "Can I help you?" "I believe you can," Elijah replied, extending a hand. "Elijah Turner. We met a while back." Charles hesitated, his brow furrowing as he searched his memory. Slowly, recognition dawned, and his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Elijah Turner," he repeated, his voice tinged with incredulity. "You're the artist?" "That's right," Elijah said, his tone calm but firm. "Though today, I'm here as a collector, and a potential buyer." The revelation. Charles blinked, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to process the situation. "You're interested in buying Oakwood Gallery?" "I am," Elijah said, his gaze steady. "I've been following the gallery's trajectory, and I think it has potential, under new leadership, of course." Charles bristled at the implied criticism, but quickly masked his irritation with a strained smile. "Well, Mr. Turner, I must admit I'm surprised. Last time we spoke, you dismissed me without even looking at my work," Elijah interrupted, his voice sharp but controlled. "You mocked my appearance, my background, and my art. But today, I'm not here to dwell on the past. I'm here to offer you a way out." Charles's face turned red, a mix of embarrassment and anger flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth to retort but thought better of it, perhaps realizing the precariousness of his position. Sophia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "We're prepared to make a generous offer, Mr. Bennett. One that could help you walk away with dignity." Charles hesitated, his pride warring with the reality of his failing business. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Let's discuss terms." A new beginning. The negotiations were swift and professional, with Elijah ensuring that the terms of the deal reflected his vision for the space. Within weeks, the ownership of Oakwood Gallery had officially transferred to Elijah Turner. The once exclusive gallery, a symbol of gatekeeping and elitism, was now under the control of the very person it had rejected. Elijah wasted no time in rebranding the space. The gallery was renamed Turner Collective, Oakwood, tying it to his original space while preserving its historic significance. The walls were stripped of their uninspired pieces and replaced with works from diverse, emerging artists whose voices had long been silenced. At the grand reopening, the gallery was transformed. Gone was the cold, impersonal atmosphere of the old Oakwood. In its place was a vibrant, welcoming space filled with energy and creativity. The event drew a massive crowd, including critics, collectors, and art lovers eager to see Elijah's vision come to life. Charles's role in the new era. To everyone's surprise, Elijah offered Charles a position as a consultant for the gallery. "Why would you do that?" Sophia asked him after the offer was made. "He doesn't deserve it." Elijah shrugged. "Because this isn't just about me. It's about proving that the art world can be different. And maybe, just maybe, he'll learn something." Charles accepted the role with a mixture of humility and gratitude, though his presence was largely symbolic. It was clear to everyone that Elijah was in charge. Legacy in the making. The success of Turner Collective, Oakwood solidified Elijah's reputation as not just an artist, but a visionary leader in the art world. His story became a powerful symbol of resilience and redemption, inspiring countless others to pursue their dreams despite the obstacles in their way. As Elijah stood in the gallery one evening, watching a group of young artists share their work with excited patrons, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The space that had once represented rejection and exclusion now stood as a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of giving others a chance to shine. "Welcome to the new Oakwood," Elijah said softly to himself, a smile spreading across his face. And for the first time, the words felt true. The grand reopening. The night of the grand reopening of Turner Collective, Oakwood was electric. The gallery, transformed from its once exclusive and sterile atmosphere, now radiated warmth, creativity, and inclusivity. A long line of attendees stretched outside the building, wrapping around the block. The crowd was as eclectic as the artwork inside, young and old, students and professionals, collectors and casual art lovers, all drawn to the buzz surrounding Elijah Turner's revolutionary vision. Inside, the gallery's walls were alive with vibrant works from artists representing diverse cultures, styles, and perspectives. There were pieces that celebrated heritage, challenged societal norms, and told deeply personal stories. Jazz music played softly in the background, setting the tone for an evening of inspiration and celebration. Elijah stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they entered. His tailored suit and calm demeanor projected confidence, but inside, his heart swelled with gratitude and disbelief. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but experiencing it felt surreal. Sophia, his ever-supportive partner and friend, stood by his side, her eyes twinkling with pride. "This is your moment, Elijah," she said, squeezing his arm. "You've done something extraordinary." Reflections on the journey. As the evening progressed, Elijah took a moment to step back and observe. He watched as patrons admired the artwork, engaged in lively discussions, and connected with the artists present. This was exactly what he had envisioned, a space where art could be a bridge, fostering understanding and dialogue. His thoughts drifted to his journey. He remembered the countless rejections, the humiliations, and the nights spent questioning his worth. He thought about the first time he had walked into this very gallery, only to be dismissed by Charles Bennett. The sting of that experience had lingered for years, but now, it felt like a distant memory, one that had shaped him but no longer defined him. Elijah turned his gaze toward a young artist named Maria, whose work was being showcased in the gallery. She was animatedly explaining the story behind her painting to a group of collectors, her excitement palpable. Maria was one of many artists Elijah had mentored, offering guidance and support to those navigating the same obstacles he had faced. "You've built something amazing here," Sophia said, interrupting his thoughts. "Not just a gallery, but a movement." Elijah nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "It's not just about me anymore. It's about creating opportunities for others, making sure no one else feels invisible." The media spotlight. The media had descended upon the reopening, their cameras and microphones capturing every moment. Journalists interviewed Elijah, the artists, and the guests, eager to cover the remarkable story of how Turner Collective had risen from the ashes of Oakwood Gallery. "Mr. Turner," one reporter asked during an impromptu press conference, "your journey from a struggling artist to a global sensation is incredible. How does it feel to now own the gallery that once rejected you?" Elijah smiled thoughtfully. "It feels like justice, but not in the way you might think. This isn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It's about proving that art is for everyone, that it doesn't belong to an exclusive few." This gallery is a symbol of resilience and change, and I'm proud to be part of that. The story quickly went viral, with headlines celebrating Elijah's triumph and the poetic irony of Charles Bennett's downfall. Social media exploded with praise, and Turner Collective became a beacon of hope and inspiration for aspiring artists around the world. Charles Bennett's redemption. Among the crowd that evening was Charles Bennett. Dressed in a simple suit, he looked like a shadow of his former self. Gone was the haughty arrogance that had once defined him, replaced by an air of humility. He watched the celebration unfold with a mixture of awe and regret. Charles approached Elijah cautiously, his hands clasped in front of him. "Elijah," he began, his voice hesitant. "I just wanted to say, congratulations. What you've done here is remarkable." Elijah turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Charles. It's been a journey." "I owe you an apology," Charles continued, his voice cracking. "The way I treated you back then was wrong. I didn't see your talent, your potential. I only saw what I wanted to see, and for that, I'm sorry." Elijah studied him for a moment before responding. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Charles hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I'd like to offer my help, if you'll have me. I know I don't deserve it, but if there's anything I can do to support this gallery, I want to be part of it." Elijah considered the offer carefully. He saw sincerity in Charles's eyes, but he also understood the importance of setting boundaries. "I appreciate the gesture, Charles. I think there's a place for you here, as a consultant. You can offer your expertise, but the vision of this gallery will always be about inclusivity and change." Charles nodded, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you. I won't let you down." The message of resilience. As the night drew to a close, Elijah took the stage to address the crowd. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This gallery isn't just a space for art, it's a space for stories, for voices that deserve to be heard. My journey has taught me that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving despite the odds. It's about taking the pain and turning it into something beautiful." He paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. "I hope this gallery inspires you to see art differently, not as something exclusive, but as something universal. Because at its core, art is about connection. It's about humanity." The room erupted into applause, the energy palpable. Elijah stepped down from the stage, his heart full. A legacy in the making. As the final guests trickled out, Elijah stood in the gallery, the space quiet now, but still brimming with life. He thought about the young artists whose careers would begin here, the conversations that would be sparked, and the barriers that would be broken. "This is just the beginning," Sophia said, joining him. "You've created something that will last." Elijah smiled. "That's the goal. To leave the world a little better than I found it." And as the lights dimmed, the gallery standing as a testament to resilience, creativity, and hope, Elijah knew he had done just that.